Good afternoon. For those people already present, we're going to give it a few minutes for more people to join, and then we'll get started. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll start in 1 minute. Okay, we'll make a start. Thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar on regulatory trends of 2025. I am Maurice Bamsti. I head up the Regulatory Affairs Group at Celegence, and I'll be co-presenting this webinar today together with Costa Huzelak, who is product owner for Describer and Dosplorer at Celegence. Who is Celegence? We are a pharmaceutical consultancy company. We provide a comprehensive range of regulatory services for biotech and pharma company with the aim to increase quality and reduce timelines and costs. And our services are improved by advanced in-house technology supporting our SMEs and enabling consistent delivery of first-time right high-quality results. And on the right-hand side of this slide, we have depicted our technology services like Captus, Dosplorer, and Describer. What are we going to do today? We have 4 topics to cover. It's an eCTD 4 update, AI and automation, an AI regulatory update, and an ATMP's 2025 update. Please, we have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions in the Q&A tab, and I think that's on the bottom of your screen. We are recording this session, and we will a recording can be provided after the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Costa for the eCTD 4.0 update.
Thank you, Maurice, and welcome everyone. So we will start with eCTD 4 update. Until maybe mid last year, it was still unclear. Let's say there were rumors that maybe industry will not even go with eCTD 4, that they will wait for eCTD 5, given all the new initiatives and the technologies available. Yeah, somewhere in the, let's say, second half of last year, it became clear, so based on also communication from the agencies, that it is in progress in all regions. And yeah, it's definitely happening. As you can see from the slide, in some countries, it's already in use, like US and Japan. In EU, from this year, the centrally approved products are available on a voluntary basis. And from next year, also for MRP, DCP, and national procedures, there are many, well, technical and production pilots either in progress or planned to be initiated soon. So it's safe to say that in a few years' time, it will become mandatory in most regions. So applicants need to be ready. Next slide, please. Well, speaking of the benefits, maybe it's important to say that it is not, let's say, a revolutionary change. So there's been some criticism also that, yeah, if we are setting a new standard, it should be, let's say, future-proof, that at least for the next decade, we take advantage of all the new technologies and initiatives. But yeah, it is what it is. Nevertheless, there are some tangible benefits that this format brings, and we will cover them here. We will not go to technical details, of course, but just to mention some of the tangible business benefits it will bring. So first of all, it's improved content organization. So there is this new concept of context of use that lets you organize your documents within a section, so to set priority, but also it has an improved lifecycle management, because what you can do in eCTD 4 is that one document can replace many documents, and also vice versa, so that life cycle is not managed on a document level, but on that context of use. Metadata corrections are improved now. So for example, minor typos that you had, for example, in manufacturer name or a product name, let's say in 3.2b or 3.2s sections, can now be just corrected without having to submit the full new structure. There is this important new concept of content reusability. So it means that you can reference the ID of a document without having to submit the actual file. So as long as you already have submitted the document to, let's say, to one agency, then in any future submission, it even doesn't have to be for the same product. You can reference that the document. It provides flexibility for future updates. And what is meant by this is that the structure is managed through controlled vocabularies, and not just the structure, but it means that you don't need to engage in time-consuming and expensive updates, software updates. So all of that can be managed through those controlled vocabularies. Terminology is standardized, which is also a nice benefit. We have new concepts such as submission unit, application. So yeah, it will make sure that we all use the same terms. Submission unit is harmonized, so the structure looks different now. Yeah, it's more simple. And in the beginning, what was communicated is that the two-way communication will be available, meaning that the responses that you receive from the agency will be managed through an eCTD sequence. But for now, it's left out of the specification. But there is still possibility for future updates that will include that. New slide, please. So when it comes to content organization, this is a nice example. So as I said, one document can replace many and vice versa. So what it means, for example, is that for some documents, like you see here, description of manufacturing process and process controls. So there are different levels of granularity that you can select. So you can have everything in one document, and then every chapter can contain, can describe one process, or you can have a separate document for each process. And when you foresee changes, then we always recommend to use this fine granularity, which is now made simpler through eCTD4. What you also see on the screen on the left is an example of our splitting tool. So we have eCTD templates, and this tool allows you to basically split one document into many, as shown here. So what is the advantage? So if you select fine granularity, it means less work, not just for authors, but also for reviewers, for internal reviewers, but also for the review of regulatory authorities. Because of course, if you need to update one process, you still need to read through the whole document, find the right place, and then of course there is a risk that agency will find something else in other chapters that were not even the subject of change. Next slide. So what you can do also to prepare. So what we always recommend is to use a lean authoring principles, and this goes specifically for the document reusability concept now. So of course you can now reference a document in multiple submissions, but to do that, the document has to be authored in a lean way, meaning that you should omit any branded information. Think of trade name, company name, but also contextual information from usually that is located in the header or footer of a document, like a purpose, status. So all of that should be avoided. So the content should be separated from the context. Also, you should think about a tabular format versus the narratives. And this is also in line with structured content principles that we are moving more towards data versus the narrative text. Another concept is that you provide information only once in the dossier, and then you reference that information. So you do not repeat the same, because of course, in case of changes, you will need to update multiple documents. And of course, you should prevent the use of synonyms, especially now with control vocabularies that will be available with eCTD4. It gives also an opportunity to standardize the values. Next slide. So what we recommend, of course, is first of all to have the strategy for the transition, because as you saw in that slide with timelines, the implementation dynamics are not the same everywhere. So it's very likely, almost certain that you will need to manage two formats at the same time. You will need to educate and train your employees, because even if the publishing is outsourced, there are still some important changes that should be considered. So there is new terminology. There are some, of course, technical changes that can also maybe cause process changes. You need to ensure timely implementation of the updates. So make sure that your software providers are compatible with eCTD4 on time. like publishing softwares, but also eCTD viewers. For example, to explore our eCTD viewer, we plan to have this compatibility somewhere in July, August this year. Then we recommend to apply those lean authoring principles, and this goes beyond eCTD4, but also for eCTD4. And this gives you also an opportunity to align vocabulary, so basically to standardize this term across products and registrations. Next slide, please. So the next topic that we will cover is AI, and in particular AI use cases. So what you see here is based on the industry surveys. So we've conducted a survey, but also based on data from some other surveys and based on, well, speaking with people on conferences. You can see here what are the most common use cases that companies engaged in. So as you can see, there are some low-hanging fruits, such as AI for regulatory intelligence. And here we distinguish between the two scenarios, let's say. So one is monitoring for regulatory updates, but also maintaining the regulatory intelligent knowledge base. Now, especially with advancement of large language models, that can also point to the source of information. So it gives you assurance that, that there are no hallucinations. Let's say you can always double check where the information comes from. So other use cases are automation of content and document translation. And here I will also show our example, what we did. We have also structured content authoring initiatives, and also AI and automation for health authority correspondence. And here we also have two types. So one is the data extraction and classification. Here primarily I mean information such as approval dates, as types of correspondences. So all of that can be quite easily, I would say, extracted from such documents. And the other one being drafting of responses, which also includes the question mining. Other use cases that we have are AI and automation for documents and content drafting. Here we will also provide some of our experience and examples, and the content comparison. You can also see here, based on our survey, what are the identified needs. So on the top, we have this data extraction from documents and other source types. And it was primarily, I would say, for IDMP data extraction from SMPC and other module 3 documents. But we also have information summarization from different sources, and also cases in medical writing for content generation and submission planning and tracking. Next slide, please. So what you see here is from Dosplorer, so our dossier management tool, and it's about content translation. So what we did, we've integrated with Microsoft Azure translation services. So basically any document, here you see an SMPC as an example, but this can be done with any document. So you have this translate document feature. So the system recognizes automatically the language of the document, and then you can select desired language for translation, and well, pretty much instantly get translation of the content. Of course, it's not in official translation, but for the purpose of understanding of the text, it's really, really good. And for the past years, we can really see also how the tool improved so that the quality is really on a high level. Next slide. And also what we have is a full dossier translation. And the use case here is if you have your product registered on one market and you want to roll it out to other markets, then of course you need to translate all your documents, but not to start from scratch. So we've implemented this feature that lets you select either a full dossier or some modules or part of a dossier, for example, or current documents from module 3. Yeah, basically select the desired language. And in the system, it is registered as a task. So when the translation is done, you receive a notification. And then you can log in and basically download, if you have the appropriate access rights, you can download translated documents in Word format. And then you don't need to start from scratch. You can just work on these documents to finish the process. Next slide, please. So this is about content comparison. So here what we can do is to compare different versions of the same document or content of any two documents, let's say specification for a product for one market versus another. And it gives you this representation. So it's either side by side or we have inline comparison. But the important thing is that you see where the changes are. So you have deletions in red, you have insertions in green. Here we see, for example, that we had in the first version sodium equal to 1871. Now it's 20 milligrams and so on. Next slide. And this is an example from CCDS, where there was a need to compare basically multiple versions of a CCDS. And since this is a highly structured document, so the same principle can be applied to any document that has the same structure, we can compare not just two documents, but basically multiple versions of the same document in the same window, and then even go chapter by chapter. So if I'm interested in the changes of therapeutic indications, I know that this is 4.1, right? So then I can see from version perspective, but also from chapter perspective, where the changes were. Next slide. And the last use case that I will show is use of AI for technical writing. So we have this client, they manage really a lot of, they have multiple products, registered in multiple markets. So they're dealing with high volume dossiers. So it's quite time intensive process. So we said, okay, let's set up a proof of concept where they send us the source documents, but also the desired output. And we will see if we can, using AI, generate the document with at least 50% accuracy and completeness in comparison to the original document. So this was the practical goal, practical objective. Yeah, so what we did, we looked at the frequency of updates, but also at the complexity. So we ranked the frequency with high, medium, and low, and decided to focus only on those that are updated most often. But also we analyzed more than 70 Module 3 documents and also ranked them for complexity, which excludes also the time necessary to prepare manually those documents. So we ended up selecting those 5 3-P documents. So they were the candidates for the POC. Next slide. And we agreed with the client, so we set up that process where we didn't want to involve the client too much, but still make sure that they're informed in time and that there is a, say, scheduled time to review our output. So we have these 30 minutes weekly calls, and we try to do this, let's say, cycle of continuous improvement. So they would share the source documents and the output. So we would analyze, and if we have questions, we will send them for clarification. We will prepare this AI-generated document, share with the client, so they will comment, we would improve, and the circle would go on and on until we have satisfactory results. Next slide. So what we learned from all of that, so what we would recommend when it comes to AI and the implementation of any basically automation is that first of all, which is absolutely necessary, the prerequisite is to have a good data governance policy and procedures, because it all starts with good inputs. So data and the content has to be of a good quality. So this is essential, not just, of course, for AI, but for any initiative. Then we will need to analyze the case studies and some best practices from the industry. So learn from others' mistakes and see which use cases worked for them. Then define the business objectives. So to see where are the pain points and where are the opportunities, and also set measurable goals. So there has to be clear criteria, well, basically benchmarks of whether you would continue with that or not. But also before engaging, you will need to have this feasibility assessment to make sure that the data is available, but also that you have the right resources, so the skills, also the right technologies and tools, and then set up a proof of concept. So start, of course, on a small scale and use the real company data for testing. So this is something we learned, and we of course recommend to avoid this sunk cost fallacy, which often happens, that there is this big idea, right, of what can be done with AI, and then even though the results are not promising, companies often stick with that. They think, okay, it has to work, we will need to make it better, but based on some experience, we would really recommend to have rather many initiatives, and then quite quickly, if you see that it's not working out, just switch to the new initiative. And then when the results are good, think about scaling up, and then of course monitoring the progress and optimizing in the process. So that was all. Then to you, Maurice.
Okay, thank you, Costa. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit from the more hands-on and applied information that Costa presented to a more abstract level or health authority level for an AI regulatory update and an update on the ATMP work plan for 2025. So just one step back, where are we currently in the EU or the US? In the EU, we have the first ever comprehensive legal framework on AI, that's worldwide. So in the EU, there was a very structured approach from 2021, where the European Commission came with a proposal for an AI Act, all the way through actually where we are now, where we have the final act adopted by the European Commission, and we're now in the implementation phase with the expected complete implementation in about a year time. I think the most prominent feature in Europe is the risk-based approach. And I think linking back to what Costa presented on AI, whatever pilot project we were working on, they fall all in the minimal risk category. So the AI supported CMC offering, for example, which means that from an obligation perspective, you don't need to worry about putting measures in place because there is no risk. Other than that, I want to leave this picture for what it is. Move a little bit to the US, where we are now. US, well, the title says targeted approach. Is it really a targeted approach in the US? What we've seen in the US from, my apologies. I lost my slide here. There it is. So in the US in 2019, already FDA started to publish all kinds of papers, discussion papers, principal papers on their own accord, and that is a process that's continuing until today. And then suddenly, by 2023, the US White House on a federal level published their AI Bill of Rights and started also to get involved with US. So is it a targeted approach? I think we cannot answer that question at this point, but it looks a little bit less structured than in the EU. So going back to the EU for this year, and we wanted to provide a little bit of with this webinar overview of what is happening, what can you expect. So in the EU, the AI Work Plan 2025 is part of the multi-annual work plan 23-28. So right smack in the middle of that plan, probably we'll see initiative next year to come up with the next work plan for 29-34. But it's the multi-annual work plan is about the collaboration of EMA with the European Commission with the heads of medicines agencies. So the main goal is still has always been and is still to guide the use of AI in pharma regulations, and the work plan should align with the AI action plan of the EU, with, as I said, the AI Act. My apologies, which, as I mentioned on one of the previous slides, that we are currently in the adoption process with finalization next year. But so far, major accomplishments are the risk-based approach model that I showed you, and establishment of an EC AI office. So what is in the works for this year? In the EU, we're going to focus on guidance and tools. So we're going to further development AI guidance, covering the entire drug development life cycle. There's finalization of an AI reflection paper and compliance frameworks, and initiation of assessment of large language models for regulatory support. And I believe KASA also briefly referred to the large language models in his presentation. So with regards to training and innovation in the EU, we're going to expand the EU Digital Academy, and that's for AI and data skills. There are initiatives on structured experimentation cycles to further explore AI solutions. And there is the implementation of the AI Observatory, and that AI Observatory will be there to monitor technology evolution and risks. So the next, we move back to the US for the work plan. And as I said, when I gave you the current status in the US, I was already talking about the initiatives on the federal level and on FDA level. Since we are pharma, I think the FDA level may be even more important to us. But what, in summary, the US federal work plan spans a new executive order, an AI action plan for this year, some memoranda that have been published on federal AI use and AI procurement, the work plan on the budget, and education and workforce development. Whereas FDA will continue to strongly focus on safe lifecycle management of AI and medicinal products, and that while completely no, not completely different, but mainly different words are being used, but it's similar to the goals in the EU. And I think that's actually very nice to see that while different approaches are taken, I think the goal, both in the EU and the US, are pretty much aligned. For the federal AI work plan for this year, as I mentioned, there was a new executive order about AI leadership. It was signed in January of this year. It revokes the previous restrictive AI policies and launches an AI action plan for the AI development. And it's all about national security and innovation and economic competitiveness. And so further, the second step was the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB. They issued 2 memorandums on federal AI use. So that's about AI governance strategies, risk management, and human oversight, and AI procurement. This AI procurement memoranda prioritizes US-made AI technologies. It deals with privacy, interoperability, and security. So there you clearly see that US also tries to protect their own market, or their own AI market. And that's a little bit less outspoken in the EU. So the following aspect is AI education and workforce development, and that's about federal initiatives for AI outreach and education. What is part of that is national challenge and competition for students. So they want to really bring it to the people in the country, and they are encouraging private-public collaborations. Looking at the FDA work plan, so it's about guidance and software as a medical device. So they're working on guidance on AI-enabled device software life cycles, which emphasizes predetermined change control plans for adaptive AI. It's about control. And then the software as a medical device action plan includes bias and real-world performance tracking. But again, also a little bit about control. I think that's a very important theme within the whole AI topic. Then with regard to governance and risk management, AI will focus on aligning of the budget of management and budget memo on AI governance and innovation, and they plan to appoint a chief AI officer to manage the development of agency-wide AI strategy. Now, shifting gears from AI to a completely different topic, namely the advanced therapy medicinal products, which I guess next to AI in pharma land is also a very hot topic for multiple reasons, not only on with respect to regulation, but very much also with respect to costs and reimbursements. But we're going to focus on regulations here. So again, a little bit of to establish a little bit of a basis. ATMPs are in the scala of medicinal products. They're on the right side of the scale of complexity, and that's not only complexity of the structure and the type of product, but also complexity of development, registration, and maintenance. What we have, and that sort of trying to put what we have in the EU and the US established on with regard to drug development is depicted on this slide. So covering the development life cycle from non-clinical all the way through to post-marketing. You see that similar things are in place in the US as compared to the EU with regard to well, there's orphan drug designations, ATMP classifications, the fast track or prime processes that we have in place that are all very much not very much applicable to ATMPs, but also to other types of products. So this is just an overview slide of the regulation and legislation that is in the EU and the US. I think what we see here is that there is general legislation like the Directive 2001/83 and the FDCA and Code of Federal Regulations in the US, and then built on top of that, there's ATMP specific regulations. So there's special attention in the EU by the Committee for Advanced Therapies on ATMPs, and in the US, those are handled by the Office of Therapeutic Products. Now, looking at the work plans again, in the EU, there's a focus on harmonization, very much support for developers, because whoever is developing an ATMP is stuck with a lot of questions and not, well, maybe in the first place, is my product really an ATMP that I'm working on, so the ATMP classification, but also the support on well, to face the challenges with regard to especially with regard to manufacturing, etc. There will be a focus on regulatory modernization and also very much support for academics. I think most ATMPs are born in universities, not so much with pharma companies. Pharma companies will take them up once they show some promise of success. So the work plan further covers the guidance finalization, manufacturing practices, and early access to ATMPs. With regard to guidance, what already has been accomplished is the EU HTA regulation, and that's since January of this year, joint clinical assessment is mandatory for ATMPs. And further, there's focus on finalizing ATMP guidance for clinical trials and new active substance designations. And with regards to manufacturing and quality of manufacturing, there's development of ATMP GMP guidance. Then the work plan in the US, and I on purpose called this CGT, cell and gene therapy, because that's the more common term in the US, while in Europe there's a preference for ATMP, but in the US, generally it's guided by PDUFA 7, which covers basically the obligations of FDA with regards to review and assessment of products. There's a focus on regulatory capacity, early engagement, and process efficiency on the part of the FDA. With regard to organization, the CBER is restructuring itself to support the growing CGT pipeline. Obviously, there's a big focus within many companies to develop cell and gene therapies as new medicinal products. So as part of the restructuring, the CBER is expanding their staff and streamlining the review under the Office of Therapeutic Products that I've shown you in one of the previous slides. With regards to early engagement, FDA very much supports the thought of having early interactions with companies that develop cell and gene therapies, and they have put an interact meeting in place to facilitate those interactions. Further, they're very much open to clarification requests and which allow follow-up on FDA feedback. So I think with this, I came to the end of my part of the presentation. Just want to point out here that we have our next webinar, that's in collaboration with reps already lined up, which is AI in Action. That's on the 3rd of June of 2025. You can scan the QR code on this slide to book a seat for that webinar. And with that, we'll stop the presentation and make some time for Q&A. And do we have questions in the Q&A tab already? Let's see if I can.
Not that I see, no.
No questions. Then let me start off with a question. Maybe people can come up with questions while we are doing the first couple of questions. So Costa, with regard to your first topic on eCTD 4.0, you spoke about lean authoring, but how does lean authoring relate to structured authoring? Is it the same? Does the one flow over in the other? How do we see that?
I wouldn't say they're not the same, but they're complementary, right? So that now that industry is shifting more towards data, right? So this is also something that is supported in our templates, right? So whenever possible, we try to avoid narratives and have the information present in tables. So, but yeah, so lean authoring principles, so they do not apply only to eCTD4, even though in the context of eCTD4, they're important because if you author or if you write your documents in a lean way, then you can ensure that they are their reusability, so that you make sure that you separate the content from the context and that you can use your document across multiple markets. So yeah, in that regard, they're complementary. Both are important.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, if I may. In your second topic about use of AI in authoring, as a general idea, we did a pilot on authoring CMC sections of the eCTD based on source data, source documents. Do you think, and this is probably interesting for generics companies, that something similar would be possible to generics companies have registrations all over the world. Mm-hmm. Those dossiers may be very scattered and slightly deviated and different from each other. So would it be possible to use AI with all those old dossiers as source documentation to create sort of a new baseline dossier that could sort of be a stand-in time from which that could be submitted to health authorities, where then that could be used as basis to build their further development on? Because maybe on the indication side or the content side, generics are not being developed pretty much, but on the manufacturing side, adding a color here or there, or adding another presentation of the product, that's of course very much happening.
Yeah, definitely. I would say what the POC has shown really good and promising results. So now that we have this system, let's say, established, the same approach, same technology can be used also for that purpose. So basically collection of data from source and compiling into new documents. So yeah, this is definitely a use case.
Okay. Do we have further questions in the meantime? You see, like I'm sharing my screen, so I cannot see the Q&A tab.
No, we don't have in the. But of course, it's also possible to reach out to us after the webinar, and in case of any questions, we'll be happy to respond.
Yes, of course. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, then I think we can close the session for today. We thank you for joining the webinar, for your attention, and hope you enjoyed it. And we are looking forward to see you in one of our future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.